Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari Hava Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaladhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaladhari Yashodanandana Janardhana Yashodanandana Janardhana Yamuna Tira Pranachari Yamuna Tira Pranachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaladhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaladhari Yashodanandana Janardhana Yashodanandana Janardhana Yamuna Tira Pranachari Yamuna Tira Pranachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Rishi Madhava Ki. So, reading from Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 3, Karma Yoga, Text 30. Acha. Danke. Chapter 13, sorry. Nature, the conscious and nature, the enjoyer and consciousness. Pakrityaiva chakaramani Prakrityaiva chakamani Kriyamanani sarvasaha Hriyamanani sarvashaha. Ya prasyati tatatmanam. Ya pasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Akatarang sapasyati. Prakrityaiva cha karmani. Prakrityaiva cha karmani. Hriyamanani sarvasaha. Hriyamanani sarvasaha. Ya prasyati tatamanam. Ya pasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Akataram sapasyati. Parityaiva charkarmani. Hriyamanani sarvasaha. Ya pasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Prakrityaiva cha karmani. Hriyamanani sarvasaha. Ya pasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Prakrityaiva cha karmani. Hriyamanani sarvasaha. Yapasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Matajis? Prakrityaiva cha karmani. Hriyamanani sarvasaha. Ya parasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Prakrityaiva cha karmani. Hriyamani sarvasaha. Ya pasyati tatatmanam. Akataram sapasyati. Prakritya, by material nature. Eva, certainly. Cha, also. Kamani, activities. Hriyamanani, being performed. Sarvasha, in all respects. Yaha, anyone who. Pasyati, sees. Tata, also. Atmanam, himself. Akataram, not the non-doer. Saha, he. Pasyati, sees perfectly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, can I beg some water from you? Just cold water's fine. Thanks. Maha water. Yeah. Bitte. Thank you. Purport. This body is made of material nature under the direction of the super soul. Whatever activities are going on in respect to one's body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to do because of the bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside all of these bodily activities. This body is giving according to one's past desires, to fulfill desires. One is given the body with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. The transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer. Translation again. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Pakrityaiva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvasaha ya pasyati tatatmanam akataram sa pasyati. So here, Krishna is explaining, once again, the field of activities and the knower of the field. And that one who is performing all these duties can be doing so, or performing these activities can be doing so without knowing that they are indeed separate from the body. However, one that can see all this connected actually sees. Is translated as actually sees. And this pertains to both the super soul, the Parama Atma, and the Jiva Atma, the Jiva, who's inside the body. He's carrying on his duties. And if you go outside, you can see all these people carrying out these activities because they have to maintain the body. They have to work simply to maintain the body. And this is what we educate our children into doing and encourage them to do well at school so that they have a greater capacity and a better opportunity in order to survive and thrive in the material world. But the question is, what is actually surviving and what is actually thriving? And so this is extreme propaganda, is propagated, is infused in the material atmosphere. It is so surcharged with the mode of passion in terms of inculcating or trying to impress upon people the essence of the sunum bonum of material life, which is to make money or die trying. You have supposed leaders in society saying this. Make millions or die trying. And this is, of course, tremendous ignorance. Because although externally, the living entity might be increasing their capacity to control the material energy, they are, or can be, and most often are, entangling themselves further in material nature. So this entanglement does not simply pertain to the material plane, but also into the karmic repercussions of what they're doing. And so more and more we are finding in day-to-day life that security is becoming more of an issue. That things seem to be a little more difficult than they used to be. Is that right? Who's nodding? Yes, so this is actually a sign of what? What is this a sign of? If security needs to be increased, if procedures are more rigid, as time goes on. Can anyone say? What does this indicate? Less trust, exactly. So there's less trust in society, and therefore, if there's less trust, then security systems must increase. And so, if there's less trust, that means there's more cheating. And if there's more cheating, this indicates that the moral character of human society is in decline. Wouldn't you say? Is that not a logical conclusion? So, and why are they doing this? Because avritam jnanam etno jnanam nityaveda kamarupena kunteya duusparena anlenacha. That thus the wise living consciousness is covered in his eternal enemy, which burns like fire. Duusparena anlenacha. So this is due to lust. It's very simple. It's very simple. Krishna consciousness is actually quite simple when you get down to the essence of it. And the essence of it is that we have to change our propensity to enjoy in the material world and to instead please the senses of Krishna. It's actually that simple. And yet it is also very difficult. because from that change, that transition from serving ourselves to serving Krishnas, we have so many obstacles. And so many obstacles are brought up by the external potency of Krishna called Maya. And Maya is a thankless servant of Krishna. Prabhupada uses this word, thankless. No one thanks Maya for testing the living entity to see whether they are actually prepared to fully surrender to Krishna. But it doesn't have to be that extreme. Krishna describes in great detail in terms of how we can do this. And so not only Krishna, but the incarnation, the golden avatar, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in West Bengal over 500 years ago, introduced the process of the Harinam Sankirtan movement. Encourage those that whatever you're doing, whatever you're presently doing, just surrender, make an offering to Krishna from the fruits of that activity. And I was just thinking about that today in terms of, for class, in terms of how ingenious that actually is. Because the reality is the Varnashram Dharma. Does anyone know what Varnashram here is? Aside from the devotees who reside here, of course. The Varnashram refers to the different Varnas and ashrams. So you've heard of Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. So these are the 4 separate Varnas. And then you have the different ashrams, which are Brahmachari and Grihastha, Vanaprastha Sannyas, like that. So Lord Chaitanya has encouraged the living entity to simply continue what you're doing in your class and give some of the fruits of that work to Krishna. And this is very practical, because the reason I realized today why it was so practical is because these classes already exist. The classes of work, depending on your parentage, depending on where you were born, you will actually be attracted to different work, to different prescribed duties. And therefore, there is no need to suddenly change your prescribed duty in order to fit in with what you consider to be a more spiritual activity, because actually that's not so much the point. The point is that yajna is given, that sacrifice is given to Krishna. So in order to free oneself from karma bandhanaha, in this connection, Krishna says, Yasham Twan Karma, hang on, Karma. Shreyan Sudama Viguna, Paradama Svanustida, Svadama, Nidanam Shreya, Paradamo, Baya Avyaha. So it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. And here, the reason Krishna's citing this is because Arjuna is at a loss what to do in Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield 5,000 years ago. And he is confused about what his duty is. And he says Arjuna says that he's lost all composure due to weakness. So he is unsure what his duty is. And Krishna could say to him, well, just look in the mirror. You're dressed as a Kshatriya. You're a Kshatriya. That's your job. Do the job of a Kshatriya. But there was so much pain for Krishna, for Arjuna, because then he realized the consequences of this, that he would have to eliminate members of his family. So therefore he was lamenting and he was thinking, well, isn't it better we go to the forest? Isn't it better that we renounce the result? So it's very profound because Arjuna was willing to renounce the result, but not give it to Krishna and to do something else, right? So he was going to renounce the result and let the opposing party take the spoils, take the kingdom. Yet he was not prepared to simply do his duty at that point and give the result to Krishna. So in a way, the Bhagavad Gita is actually substantiating what Lord Chaitanya Prabhu has said, and that is simply a matter of doing your prescribed duty and giving the result to Krishna. So without proprietorship. So prakriti kriyamanani gunaya kamani sarvaza hankara vimudadya katam iti manyate. Thus the wise foolish people think that they are in the proprietor of activities when it's actually carried out by divine nature. Prakriti kriyamanani. Ahankara vimudhatma. They're bewildered by the ahankara, the false ego. So this is the position of anyone that doesn't give the results to Krishna. Unless you connect it to Krishna, unless you connect it, then all the activities are actually illegitimate. So it's a very profound message, because essentially you are cutting Krishna out of the loop. So just as in any society, apart from certain countries of the world, unless you pay the tax department a portion of the correct portion of your income, then the tax department will rule against you, that this is a criminal. Why? Because he's not paying his fair share to the state. So obviously Krishna does not need, it's not that Krishna is in need of our yajna. We're in need. We're in need of this sacrifice. We're in need of connecting our activities to Krishna. Because once we do this, they become spiritualized. Whereas if one thinks that he is the proprietor, then one is actually acting as a criminal. So grand larceny. This is theft from Krishna. And there is no escaping the justice of Krishna because antantarasta paramano chayantarastam. Krishna is inside the atom and outside the atom. You can imagine the power of a police force that was inside every atom and outside of every atom. That would really be the long arm of the law. So this is what Krishna is. And he can, at any point, make us accountable for this. So this is the ignorance of the material world, is that they are doing the complete opposite. They are preaching the idea that you can achieve whatever you want. It's like my brother is listening to these motivation tapes, and they're saying, "Look, it's all just mindset. It's just fundamentally they're saying it's what you believe. It's like a reincarnation of the hippie mentality that if you just believe it, it'll come true." So this has now been repackaged and sold in the 2020s as the idea that, the people that failed, they were just weak. They didn't understand. They didn't have these cassettes that you can now have for a small fee. And then I think I remember saying to my brother, well, but what about the dog? Is the dog, if he has the mindset, can he also make millions? So, no, you are restricted from where you're born. From the very where you take birth, you're restricted by your karma. If you're born into poverty, where you don't have much opportunity, then immediately your chances of becoming wealthy are so much more reduced, as opposed to being born in an opulent family in a wealthy country, with good education. Your chances are much higher of making money. So to say that it's just mindset is ridiculous. This is the idea of prescribed duties is to clarify the position that are we supposed to renounce our work or renounce the fruits of our work, or both. So at this point, if I refer back to the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was willing to renounce both. That I don't want to be a Kshatriya, I don't want the fruits, I don't want it tainted. I don't want a kingdom tainted with blood that has been obtained through the death of my close relatives. Therefore, better to renounce it. But all this means is that someone else is going to have to do this duty, and it may cause greater reactions. So, if we don't perform duties, there will be scarcity. So this is another poignant point, because this is precisely what's happening in the world right now. So yajna, performing our yajna, as I cited with the verse before, work performed has to be formed for the benefit of Vishnu. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in the material world, karma bandhanaha. And moreover, if these sacrifices aren't performed, there will actually be shortages in the world, which is now what we're experiencing. And to this end, Krishna says, Anad bhavati bhutani parjanyarana sambhava yajna bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudvava. So he said, rains are produced from yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So if the prescribed duties are not performed, the yajna is not performed, and in this way, there will be a scarcity in the food supply. And we're seeing more and more as the people of the world are repudiating and giving up all these sacrifices that used to be performed even within the Muslim faith, within the Christian faith. There was some yajna, there were some rules that were followed, there was austerity performed. So this is pleasing to Krishna because it's some yajna, it's an offering, it's renunciation. I'm renouncing, for instance, this form of sense gratification in deference to the Lord. So this is a yajna. So, and as we are seeing that this is decreasing more and more around the world, we are noticing by far more and more problems. And this is what's happening, of course, with the present war. And people are in great despair right now, or they're pretending it doesn't exist. They're either in two states right now with regard to the war in the Ukraine. They're either thinking, oh my God, this is like ridiculous. This could kick off at any time. And the nuclear weapons could cause havoc all around the world. Or they are pretending it's not happening. So they are in a state of denial and they simply carry on with their work. But actually, people are in a great state of desperation and anxiety. So, and why? Is because it's the ignorance. It is the lack of education. From Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which delineates this science of how there can be peace in the world, is that these sacrifices have to be performed. Not only the sacrifices have to be performed in order to ensure the food supply, which is predicted to be a very big problem next year. So people can't understand, why is this happening? Why do we not have regular rainfall? Why is there this supposed climate change? To this end, we say, there are people that say that this is a anthropogenic, which means it's caused by man. And then you have other people who are alternative thinkers saying that no, this is not anthropogenic. This is simply a cycle that is happening, and it could be, for instance, it doesn't have to be caused by man, but it could be caused by a time period, a cyclical time period that we're going into a climate change. But actually, it's my feeling that the first group is actually correct, but not for the reasons they think it is. Not that it's from CO emissions, but rather it is from lack of yajna, lack of sacrifice. And this is why we're not seeing consistency in the weather, and this is why we're seeing increases in food prices and so many other calamities. So we have so much knowledge in this world, we have so much history, we have so much capacity for producing food, that the United States usually threw out so much food, because to sell it would be to flatten the market price. So we have so much capacity, so much knowledge, there is no problem, there is no shortage, and yet we find there's so much shortage. So how is that possible? How is that possible? When so many people know how to make food, how to transport food, how we can feed the world, particularly if we take on a vegetarian diet, this could be increased 8-fold, and yet there's scarcity. So how can you, and they give one political reason after another, well, this is because of Russia and the covert war started by USA, etc., 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 oil prices, etc., etc., etc. But actually it all comes down to Ishvaraham Mahambogi, that the Russians are thinking, this is our territory, and another party is thinking, no, this is mine, due to ahankara. So they're fighting like cats and dogs over this, and they're causing so much disturbance for all the other humans. So this is ignorance. This is Ishvaraham Mahambogi. I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, rather than Krishna's enjoyer. And then we have to sacrifice for him. So Krishna gives a nice peace formula in Bhagavad Gita that describes how this can be solved. And it's Bhaktaram Yagatarpasam Sarvalokamanaheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutvanam Natvamam Shantim Richati. I am the source of all sacrifices and austerities, the controller of all the demigods. So simply surrendered unto me. And in this way, the tree can be nourished. The tree can be nourished simply by pouring water at the base. There's no need to go and individually water each leaf or each branch. Just as the tax department simply needs to be paid. The central tax department is paid, and they will then organize all the other payments to all the various departments that the government runs. There's no need to go to each individual department and to pay like this. So this is a very simpler formula. If everything is done for Krishna, if everyone recognizes that it's ultimately Krishna's property and that we are simply custodians, there's no way we can hang on to this. Even though if we might have the illusion of passing it on to our descendants, that is illusory. That is simply another living entity's karma to be born in your line. So the final point is that the tendency for the living entity to enjoy, to think himself independent of Krishna, is a manifestation of this envy. That why is he? Why not me? Why not me? So why? Because you are a eternal servitor of Krishna. This is your constitutional position. It's not mutable. It's not changeable. There's nothing we can do to change the fact that we are Jariva Sarupa Hoya, Krishnera Nityadas. That we are a marginal entity of Krishna. And this is our position. So if we try to resist this authority, and to create our own kingdoms, our own fiefdoms, this will only entangle us further. And to waste the human form of life in this way is the greatest harm. You're actually doing the greatest harm to yourself. Because if you waste your life in material pursuits, it is over. And if you die in the mode of ignorance, then it may be many hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions, before you get the opportunity in a human birth again to realize Krishna. Atata Brahma Jignasa. Therefore, the conclusion is that now is the time for spiritual inquiry, and now is the time to understand Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments or additions? Yes, Prabhu. Shishi Plad Shankadev Ki.
Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing your nice realizations. Just one comment about when you mentioned at the end that, how are they telling us, how the explanation for why rain is not coming, why there's inconsistency in the weather and so on. And I heard once that, not exactly regarding climate change, but generally science answers the question of how. So they start telling you, because this and this is happening. Why is the sky is blue? Yes, because this gas is giving this color and so on. But actually they are not answering the question why. And the spiritualist is asking the question of why, and the scientist is answering the question of how. They don't know actually why. And the why is, like you said, for example, is by higher power, because we're not doing yajna, because Krishna desired this and so on. So just thought about it.
That's a good observation. And so I guess philosophy tries to answer why. And Krishna consciousness falls obviously into that category, which is the Raja Vidya Raja Guyam is the king of education, Paritranaya Sadhana, and through direct perception, and is therefore considered the topmost religion. So we have an overabundance of scientific knowledge. We have all this material knowledge. The world has never been so advanced materially. And obviously, in the next week, we'll have accrued more material knowledge. But if they don't solve this problem about how we can live with each other, then it's all for naught, because it can be destroyed. It can be easily destroyed through envy of each other. But ultimately, the envy of each other is envy of Krishna. Therefore, Vijavanaya Sampanya, the wise person sees Krishna in every living entity and offers respect. And ultimately this is envy of the self, if you really want to get deep into it. So we dislike others if there's something in ourselves we dislike. A lover of Krishna who has affection for all living entities. So therefore it's considered the paramount spiritual knowledge is to develop love of God, and in this way, love for all other living entities. Love, compassion, tolerance is there. But it's not false tolerance, and it's not false love, because it actually knows what the ultimate best interests of the people are. So for instance, a parent does not negligently give the 8-year-old keys to the car. The parent does not just allow the child to access to the liquor cabinet. The responsible parent does not allow a baby to eat as much sweets as it likes until it's sick and has to be taken to the hospital. So that would be, if one did that, they could argue, yes, but it's what they wanted. So that would be false compassion. That would be false love. And so all these material expressions of love and tolerance are actually all fake. 98% of them are all fake about how people should behave and how people should tolerate this or tolerate that and promote this or promote that. 98% of the time, this is false. This is ignorance. And it's pushing people into darker and darker regions of hell. So therefore, it is incumbent upon also the residents of Bharata Bhumi to preach this Krishna consciousness around the world. And just how do we do that? Well, first we become examples ourselves. And we follow Bhagavad Gita. We read Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, which is available at our book table over there. And in this way, people can get true knowledge and true direction in order to correct the disastrous course of this misguided civilization. Because it's becoming more and more apparent that they don't know what they're doing. And if this goes down badly, then people really will want spiritual answers. So we have to be ready for that. There was another good observation, and hopefully I'll finish off, unless there's other questions or comments, that up until the time of close to Emperor Constance, around the 300, 400 AD, the Christian sect was exactly that. The Christianity was considered a very insignificant sect within Rome. And they were eventually being tolerated because they persevered and they got through the persecution. And then suddenly it was adopted by Emperor Constantine. And then suddenly it started to get very big momentum and then became obviously the biggest movement in the West, spiritual movement in the West. So Krishna consciousness may be dormant now, so to speak, but at any moment things can change. So it's very important then to keep faith in Srila Prabhupada's teachings, because ultimately it's not about impressing other devotees, impressing your family, but it's about developing your individual relationship with Krishna, which is eternal. Nahabikrema nashasti pradyavyo na vidyate svalpamivi asyadama. Yeah. Trayate ma tobayat, and can release you from the greatest fear. So there's no diminution, there's no loss, there's no negative side effects of endeavoring in Krishna consciousness. And so this is what Srila Prabhupada wants you to do. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Oh, yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Also was at the morning session. We saw visuals of Srila Prabhupada teaching, and for me, I think you kind of connected those parts. Example of controller, the master controller, and we are kind of some of them are in a smaller controller, and because of ignorance, they think that they are the controllers, but the supreme controller is Paramatma, and we are Jivatma. And I think you also gave an example of why we have a lot of crows. Examples of Srila Prabhupada gave swans and crows, and why so many crows? Because of we are under the test of Maya, so that with the Krishna consciousness, you can transfer from cows to swans, and it's very much needed in the current society, in the current situation. The Krishna consciousness, the efforts done by ISKCON is very much needed in the current situation. Just want to share that, my thoughts.
And arguably never more than now. People are extremely disheartened. And yes, it's these little controllers, and if they're very intelligent, then they will write a book, write a philosophy, a manifesto, and they'll get other people to join their manifesto, and so they can be the leader and the ultimate control of these groups. But ultimately, if it's against Sanatana Dharma, it's doomed to failure. It's just doomed. It cannot last. It is all temporary. It is absolutely temporary. But the illusion's so very strong. It's very strong. I was talking to my dad, and he was just lamenting that his children weren't there and his grandchildren weren't there in Australia. I'm thinking, yeah, but you're 81. I mean, this shouldn't be your concern. At any time you can go. But still, the illusion's so strong. But this is a natural. People want affection. People want love in this world. But unfortunately, because the conditioned nature of it, it's always perverted. It's always conditional to some extent, unless one's very fortunate enough to have devotee parents. Even then, there might be some good intentions. I don't know, but Thakur, do you want to comment on that? I'm just kidding. I'm just jokes. So this is the nature. I mean, it sounds very negative, but it is negative. This is where we've encountered misery, we've encountered suffering, and this is why intelligent people have turned to Krishna consciousness, because they want a definitive, permanent solution to this. This is the only solution. It's the only solution. Everything else is permanent. Even if one tries to suicide themselves, that's not permanent. So, yeah, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. Kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva giti anyata. There is no other way but chanting Hare Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna. And taking shelter of the Lord's pure devotee, and in this way, we can also enjoy our remaining time in this lifetime. And it's so amazingly transcendental that we are, within days, you can be doing transcendental activities on this planet. Which is amazing, to think that you can do activities that are performed in the spiritual world within a few days if you join ISKCON. You're partially in the spiritual world once you start engaging in this process, which is inconceivable actually. But you have to stay on the path. But you can actually be engaged in transcendental activity. So in one sense, you are already liberated simply by doing this yajna for Krishna. But your body is just remaining in this world until you finish that time period. So it's a completely transcendental process. Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON ki, Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada.